with the hardest name in the world I've ever had to say on a podcast. Lesya, I know is her first name, and Holzapfel, I hope I don't slaughter it too bad, as your last name. I never even thought to ask you, what is that from? Where is that from? And so it's Ukrainian, actually, right?
Well, my first name's Ukrainian. My
Right.
last name's
That's
German because my husband has a
right.
German heritage. But
Ah,
my maiden name was Galay, which is Halai, which is Ukrainian. And then my first name is very Ukrainian. There's actually a Ukrainian kind of icon. They called her Lesya the Ukrainka, Lesya Ukrainka. So it's a very famous name. And it's surprising most people didn't even know I'm Ukrainian, where my name is very popular in Ukraine.
and it just shows that, especially Americans, are very stupid when it comes to geography, and we don't really
You know,
think
I am
about.
too. I was like, wait, where is this? I am too. So it's all
Yes,
good.
yes. But if we hear about Billy Bob, we know that person's from the southern United States. So
Yeah.
so guys, I've had Lesya on before. She is Eat, Be Fit, Explore over on Instagram, and she also has a wonderful companion one, BSB Tribe, and that'll come into play here in a minute when we get into the aspect of what you're doing to help your people. But I'm going to set the stage. We're not talking about the political aspect. It's not
Please
interesting.
no.
Everybody and their mama's talking about it. We're not interested in talking about the war. It's sad and all the things. We're going to focus on the humanity of this story. And I love that you're a connection to that country that we can talk to, because you still have family that lives there. And even in your town of Cleveland, Ohio, you were telling me there's like a nice section of Ukrainians that live in the Cleveland, Ohio area. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit of kind of the story of how you came to America from the Ukraine.
Yeah, so I came to the States when I was 3 years old. So this was in 1990. You guys can do the math to see how old I am. And pretty much my parents wanted to come here basically for the same reason that everybody else wants to come to America. It's the land of opportunity. So when we grow up, Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union, and it was very hard for my family to get visas to get us out. And finally, they were able to do that in 1990. And so my parents, they wanted us to have an education, and they wanted us to have a better life, and they knew that we would be able to do that in America. So at that time, it was just my older sister and I, and she's 2 years older than me. And so my parents, it took them forever, but they finally got visas. And we had options, like we could go to Cleveland, Ohio. There was a Ukrainian community starting to build there. So this was like way early on. There was only a few families. Yes, I'm on the left. I'm very grumpy. I was very, very upset to be on an airplane at 3 years old. Pretty sure I got sick. I have vague memories, and my parents said that I was like super grumpy, crying all the time. For a 3 year old, I think it's a big deal to move from a different country. Yeah, that's my sister and I, right before we left our home in Ukraine in 1990. So it was a big transition. My parents didn't speak the language, but they didn't have jobs, they didn't know anything. And luckily, we got sponsored by a family. So it was either Cleveland, Ohio, or we were going to go to Sacramento. And my dad let my mom decide, and she chose Ohio. And I was like, Mom, we could have been living in California. It's warm there. But I'm glad, because then I would have not, met the people I have and got married to the husband that I have and all that. So it all worked out. But so we migrated to Cleveland, Ohio, and there was a family there that came from Ukraine a little earlier and that sponsored us, which pretty much means, if you're thinking about sponsoring a family, you are doing everything for them. You're paying for all their stuff, their food, you're letting them into your home, you're helping them with everything until they get their feet off the ground. And my parents were working jobs and trying to support us, trying to learn the language, go to ESL in community college to learn the language and all of that, just to get a better life for us.
That is amazing. And look, what I'm hearing already is part of the Ukrainian spirit is family and connection, even to non-biological family. Just the nationhood of you're from that country bonds you in a special way. I don't really feel that in America as much, quite like what you're describing here.
Yeah, you're right on. You're spot on. Culture wise, family, traditions, community is pretty much the heart of Ukraine. I mean, it's a known thing that whenever you go somewhere, if there's Ukrainians there, they're going to invite you into their homes and they're going to serve you like a 10-course meal, and then they're going to say, we have a room for you. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's almost insulting if you get a hotel, if you go
Yeah.
somewhere where you know Ukrainians, because they're all about the community, family, the traditions, helping each other out. And that's kind of how Cleveland, Ohio, especially Parma is, where there's a really big Ukrainian community there. It's called Ukrainian Village, and there's shops and there's churches and there's stores, and everyone's just kind of like this community that we built in Cleveland is where I grew up. It was very much like Ukraine in Cleveland. So that was kind of cool. I really got into the culture just through there.
Sounds like what the Cubans did in Miami. They kind of carved out Little Havana. You've got
Yes.
Little Ukraine in Cleveland,
Yeah, I
Ohio.
did hear about that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. So how many people are in like your area? You say it's a large contingent. What's that? How many?
So as far as where I'm from, I'm not sure exactly of the area, but of how many people are in there, but it's one of the bigger cities. So it's not, as
No.
far as relationship to Kiev, it's probably about like 300 miles. So it's like Kiev's the capital and it's here. And then I'm from, it's called Ivano-Frankivsk.
Okay.
I'm not sure the exact population right now there, but it's more of like southwest from where Kiev is.
That's interesting, but I was asking about Cleveland. How
Oh,
many?
Cleveland. Oh, I'm not sure about Cleveland, but there's a lot. I don't know the exact number, but there's like pretty much growing up in Parma, like everyone was Ukrainian. Like you go to the store, you go to Giant Eagle, and like you would see all like your whole church there. So I mean, I would say at least a few thousand, if not more. Like there's a lot. It was, and a lot of them probably like moved to like more North Royalton and other parts of Cleveland and stuff. But as far as Cleveland goes, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but there's definitely a really big Ukrainian presence there.
So Sacramento and Cleveland, are there other pockets since 1990 that have developed that have Ukrainian Americans?
Yeah, so New York has some, I believe, in Utica. Rochester has a pretty big one. Um, where else? There's some in Florida. I mean, they're kind of scattered
Yeah.
throughout, but definitely Sacramento has a really big one. I think Oregon also has a pocket of, they're just kind of like, now they're probably scattered in a lot of different areas, but definitely parts of Florida do, like Tampa, Clearwater. Just trying to remember, because honestly, whenever we would go on vacation in Florida, we would never get hotels. We would just stay with Ukraine. How do we know these people? I don't know. We just know them. And they would just let us into our homes and be like, here, you can have our house and we'll go stay with other family members. And it was just like that everywhere we went. So it's just, it's pretty cool.
Is there an app for that where you can just
No, you just like, you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and you just like, hey, do you know anyone that lives in this part of Florida? Yeah, sure. My cousin's mom, sister's wife, brother's son lives there. Let me call her.
that is so trusting because I don't know any American I would give my house to live in.
Yeah, we're very hospitable, meaning like we will open up our homes to complete strangers. Like when I was growing up and I was part of like the church youth group, we would go to different conferences as a youth group, and families would just let us in, and it would just, we would be sitting there like, we were like, okay, here are all the people, and who's willing to take in families, and there'd just be like everyone's just raise their hand, I will, and then they'll feed you and they'll take care of you, and it's just this community where you just, you know that you're going to be taken care of, and it's like, it's just that trust, being that you're from the same place. It's just a cultural thing.
And I love all of that. I think that is a beautiful spirit to have. And if that encompasses what the Ukrainian culture is about, count me in. I want to be an honorary Ukrainian. But tell us a little more about kind of what it's like in the country, because obviously there's very cultural things, and we're hearing lots of things with all that's happening. But I want to hear from someone firsthand. What is the Ukrainian culture? What does it mean to be Ukrainian?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, they're very big on family and traditions. So there's a really big, and especially with like the food and the clothing, very festive, very like embroidery things and floral things. I still have a Ukrainian shirt that my mom just keeps on she finds it and then like she give it to me like, hey, your kids should wear this. And so it's very much like painting eggs at Easter, and there's a very big also presence with the religion. So there's a lot of like Orthodox Ukrainians and Catholic Ukrainians, and obviously we're more of Pentecostal, or how I was raised was Pentecostal, so there was a lot of Pentecostal Ukrainians. So all the Christian holidays are a big deal there. With the traditions, and obviously the food is a big thing. The staples with, you know, the pierogies and the corn, a lot of corn influences there. We do a lot of carbs, not very keto friendly, but, you know, sauerkraut and, you know, a lot of fish and just like bread, stuff like that, very big there. And it's just, they're very much like tradition. So a lot of people, I'd say a lot of people would probably consider Ukrainians very old school, because it's like they are the way they are and they don't want to change. They're happy with the way the things are, the way things have always been done. It's like very much like old traditions they want to pass on to their kids. So it's very focused on traditional things, very basic religion and all of that, a lot of like dance. And obviously I didn't really grow up there, so I wasn't very involved in a lot in the country per se, but, and then when I moved here to Cleveland, my community was very church focused. So there's like, obviously like a party side to Ukraine where like their weddings are like for days and weeks, and they'll like drink and they'll dance. So I didn't grow up in that because my family was Pentecostal and technically we weren't allowed to do any of that. So I wasn't the fun party Ukrainian, but there's very much a big focus on that community and the culture and just being together and having a good time.
Sounds like the cuisine is kind of a cross between like Germany and even like parts of the Mediterranean, Italy, kind of, it's like this fusion of that. And of course, you're right there geographically, right between those countries.
Yeah, and like Polish influences with the pierogies and like the borscht, like the beet soup and all of that, definitely. Root vegetables, very heavy on the root vegetables. A lot of fried stuff and just a lot of carbs. Garlic. Ukrainians put garlic in everything. So there's like, you go to church on Sunday morning and you're like, the probability of you sitting next to someone that had a lot of garlic or kielbasa with garlic is really high.
A lot of people ask me, Jimmy, how do you get such good deep sleep? Well, there's a lot of things that I do, but one of the newest things that I recently added is this upgraded magnesium from a company called Upgraded Formulas. Go to their website, upgradedformulas.com, and you can learn all about this nano technology that they use for this particular mineral of magnesium. Again, it's called Upgraded Magnesium, and it's got all the different forms of magnesium in it using the nanotechnology, so it gets absorbed a lot better. Guys, I have seen my deep sleep improve by as much as 30 to 40% simply by adding in this product along with sunshine exposure, darkness in the room, cooler temperature, all of the things that I always have done. So again, upgradedformulas.com is the website. Go check them out.
I wonder if that started like when they thought garlic would ward off witches, and so maybe.
My parents swear they use garlic like the My Big Fat Greek Wedding uses Windex. Like, oh, you're sick? Eat garlic. They just eat it straight, like it's a clove. Yeah, literally, garlic cures all. My mom just like eats. My parents, that still to this day, are obsessed with just eating raw garlic because they swear by it. Yeah, I know. I didn't. I love garlic, but not that much.
So Christianity is kind of the dominant religion there?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the way that it's kind of like divided, where there's a big influence in the Orthodox and then Catholics, and then there's obviously Greek Orthodox, and then there's pockets of different ones, but definitely Christianity is the main one. And then, you know, I was raised in like, my area is very heavily Pentecostal. So It's just like, but definitely as in the country as a whole is Christianity for sure.
Yeah.
Christianity based.
So you're Pentecostal, so is it the hooping and hollering down the aisles and speaking in tongues and that kind of Pentecostal?
Well, I was raised Pentecostal.
Yeah.
I actually transitioned out of that community, and I am more, I would consider non-denominational myself and my family, but well, my own family. But yeah, Pentecostal, it's pretty much yeah, like you said, the different languages, having like the different tongues and all of that. And of course there's different extremes, like some churches are a little more extreme about that than others. But yes, the church that I went to in Ukraine was very much where people would speak in tongues, and it wasn't very like charismatic where people would like dance or do that type of things, but definitely having like speaking in tongues was a main focus there.
So I was a Southern Baptist boy, and the first time I ever went to a
Yeah,
Pentecostal, I went, "What
yeah.
is happening?"
I know it's kind of it's like a culture shock and like a religion shock if you're not used to it. Our church wasn't that extreme. We were a little more subtle about it. But yes, I have taken my husband to a Pentecostal church here in Columbus when we were searching for churches, and it was one of those, like the extreme ones. And I would say he was pretty shocked and he was pretty worried. He looked a little scared, and I was like, "Don't worry, this isn't really how I grew up." So there's different levels, but I hear you. Yes.
That's funny. So, guys, if you're just coming in, I'm talking to my friend Lesya Holzapfel. She is over on Instagram, Eat, Be Fit, Explore. And I Lesya for many years. You've done keto and just nutritional health and all the things. But today we're talking a little bit different about she's from the Ukraine, and she moved here at 3 years old, lives in the Cleveland, Ohio area with a contingent of fellow Ukrainian Americans. And we're talking about the humanity aspect of the Ukraine. No war talk, no politics. We don't care. We're going to focus on what we're focused on. Just keep that in mind when you're writing comments. So okay, you're a food girl. Why have you never made like a Ukrainian cuisine like cookbook or something?
You know, I grew up with like my mom would make a lot of Ukrainian food, but then she also wanted to adapt the American culture.
Ah,
So, being that we've pretty much been here for a very long time now,
yeah.
that she started kind of doing more American recipes, and then it was kind of a mishmash. Now I make some Ukrainian influenced dishes, and I even have a couple on my blog, like Ukrainian cucumber, tomato, onion salad. That's like a very Ukrainian staple salad. But for the most part, I think that when I was growing up, like, to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the Ukrainian food. There's some things I absolutely love, and I like shuba, which is it's called a herring in a fur coat. And it's really crazy to people that don't know what it is, but it's pretty much like herring, which is a fish, and then like it's layered, a layer of potatoes, a layer of carrots, a layer, and then like it's topped with like mayo and beets, and it's mixed together, and it's like a layered salad, and it's like my favorite. And so I make those things sometimes, but it's really not and again, like I follow more of like a low carb diet, and so a lot of those foods aren't very like, they don't work well with a low carb diet. But for me, maybe someday I would like to do more like my twist on that, where it's kind of mixed. But I honestly, it's not that I don't like the food. I do enjoy it. I just didn't grow up eating a lot of the Ukrainian foods. It was always like a mix, unless I went to Ukrainian wedding, because obviously like all of Ukrainian weddings are crazy. If you ever go to an authentic Ukrainian wedding, like you will have like 3 tables of food that's like everybody makes food, and it's like a buffet, and it's like the most food you've ever seen in your life. I'm not even going to start with the dessert. And it's like at my wedding, I had a dessert table that was Ukrainian food, and pretty much all my aunts and my mom and like her friends and their friends all made a dessert. It was crazy, Jimmy. I had to like say, okay, we cannot open the dessert table until like after the meal is over, because what happens is as soon as the dessert table's open, you'll just see a herd of people there, and they're trying to get all the best stuff. And I was like, we need to hide this table. But when it was like revealed, all the Americans in my wedding, because we had like a Ukrainian American wedding, were like, oh my God, I've never seen so much dessert in my life. I'm like, yeah, that's how we roll. We love our desserts. So yeah, maybe someday I will write something that's like
Hang on a second.
intertwined.
Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, because somebody just tried to call me and usually kills it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but somebody tried to call, and usually people can't hear me when somebody calls. So
Yeah.
I'm glad. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, I try to kind of intertwine some Ukrainian things into my recipes that I have on my blog, Eat Be Fit Explore, as much as I can. But again, because I mainly follow like the keto low carbish way of eating, paleo, it's kind of hard to do too much of it because it's very carb heavy and carb focused food.
Yeah, and look, that's cool. I was thinking when you were talking about fusing the American food that your mom was with like some Ukrainian. I was imagining like McDonald's French fries with sauerkraut on top or something.
No, we definitely never really had McDonald's. And that was like the other thing. Ukrainians are very much of like, you eat food at home and you make food at home. And like, they don't
Yes.
really like to like go out to eat. Like my parents probably, I can count on like my two hands the amount of times my parents went out to eat. It's very
Yeah.
much like you make food at home, we make it from scratch. It's kind of their love language. I would say the
Yeah.
food is like my mom's and a lot of Ukrainian women's love language. It's how they show love, it's how they serve. It's like how they, it's how they feel that they're contributing, and it's a big deal for them to host, and it's like it's really everything to them, and it's almost offensive. And side note, if you ever go to somebody's house that's Ukrainian or Ukrainian offers you food, it's actually pretty offensive to say no. So even if you're not hungry, just take a few bites, because they do take that seriously, because that is a big part of the culture and the love language aspects, that it's almost like offensive to them if you say no to their food. So
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen that in a lot of places around the world. America's the only one where we're like, yeah, give me all the fast food and as quickly as possible, and we don't really make it a communal experience, which is why family is probably so precious, because there's talking and during the communalness of eating and sharing a meal. And yeah, just culturally that totally makes sense. How about obesity and chronic disease? Is it rampant? It wouldn't sound like it would be. It sounds like if they're eating at home, trying to focus on, I mean, obviously carby foods, but maybe
mhm.
from a genetic standpoint over generations, they've adapted to be able to eat those carbs and not be harmful within that context. Or has westernized food infiltrated? Do you know?
So I think it's kind of a mix. I think in Ukraine itself, I don't think the obesity and diabetes are as prevalent as the Ukrainians that migrated to an American culture. And part of that I also think is just like the amount that they like move over there and walk over there. And not that it's like
Yeah.
all about calorie balance, as we know, but there's just the work that they do, the physical work and the walking places versus just sitting at a desk job for 8 hours a day and stuff. I do see, unfortunately, that a lot of the Ukrainian community has, there are issues that are coming up with diabetes.
In Cleveland,
And
you're saying? In Cleveland?
yeah, well, so right now I live in Columbus. I
Okay.
moved out here when I got
Ohio.
married. Yeah,
Ohio.
when my husband, he just, was like, okay, I'll come to Columbus. But in general, I do see it like the older that they get, there are a lot of Ukrainians that are struggling now with obesity and diabetes, but like specifically, even some of my family members, which is very devastating and heartbreaking. But that's again because they're just very traditional and they're very stuck in their ways. Like, well, this is what I grew up eating. I grew up eating potatoes, fish and potatoes and the pierogies and the pelemeni and the vareniki and all of these things that are like pretty much like carb based. And that's, if that makes a majority of their diet, and the vegetables that they do eat, a lot of it's like corn or sauerkraut. And so it's like it's hard because there's some that adapted to like more of healthier ways of eating and the low carb, or even just like focusing on quality protein and vegetables and good fats. But there's some that are just they don't want to change and they're set in their ways, and it's unfortunate. I even know friends that talk about their family members that they're on the verge of getting their like legs amputated because of their diabetes and the severity, and they just refuse to change their lifestyle. And that's again also another piece of Ukrainians is like, we as a culture are very stubborn. I am very stubborn, and I will admit that. And I think that's a very cultural thing where we just like, we're stubborn. We just don't want to change, and it's hard for us to adapt to things. And it's just like a mindset and a culture thing. So unfortunately, you know, there is a price to pay when it comes to that, when you're not going to be changing your lifestyle, and that's just unfortunate. And the only thing we can do is like educate and kind of change the generations, right? From going forward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the socioeconomic aspect of the Ukrainian kind of culture. Is it a low class kind of culture, kind of a middle class dominant like we are here in America? Are there great divides when it comes to income? Want to talk
So I
about
would
that?
say it would probably be like more low to middle.
Okay.
Again, I mean, I grew up here, and I'm like very like, I would call myself an American, even though I was born there and I'm like Ukrainian. But I would say for the most part, it's more on the poor end and middle class. Like Ukrainians are very frugal, so they're all about savings.
Yes.
And it gets a little extreme at times, like, oh no, that's too much, or we can't afford this, or how can we save money? They're very like bargain hunters, very, very big in the culture. So I think that's just like from growing up and not having a lot of money. So I mean, I'm sure there's pockets of Ukraine that's more wealthier, but I would say in the area that I grew up, it was more of a low to middle class. Now, you know, my dad had a great job. He went to college. He was actually a watch repairman, which was actually considered a very prestigious job
Yeah.
in Ukraine. And so, you know, we were it was fine. I mean, he grew up really poor, but we were making do. But he just knew that he wouldn't be able to get the opportunities that he could in this country because of that, just like income levels and the amount of money to make and all that stuff. But I would say in general, it's the culture where I'm from, it's more focused in like just that there's like always a shortage of things, and it's like you have to save your money, and what are you saving it for? I don't know. And that was kind of the hard thing for me to get past when
Yeah.
I started my own business, because my mindset was very programmed with my upbringing that there's never enough. And there's, you know, if I take a piece of pie, then nobody has the piece of the pie type of thing mindset. And so it's like, you know, you have to save, and you can't spend money on this. And how dear, oh my gosh, you paid this for what? Like, what? I could have gotten a million of these little trinkets for that, and just things like that. And I feel like that's a mindset thing that I had to get over, but it was just based on my upgrowing. It's like, no, we can't afford that. That's too much. And we need to save and clip coupons. And I just think it was because of that, being raised in that way.
Yeah, I can tell you here in the South, there's a lot of coupon clippers and always searching for bargains. And so,
Sales, yeah, getting everything. Oh, that will go on sale. Let's just wait. Or, you
yeah,
know, the like almost expired meats and groceries and all of that. And it, you know, to each their own. That is like a mindset that I had to get over with starting my business, because I was like, I will not be successful in business if I have that lack, you know, that lack mentality.
it's good for survival, though. So it's good that that's the
Yes,
mentality
of course.
that you can last if you have that mentality. Whereas if you're less frugal and everything's gone, then you might be hungry and not be able to eat.
Yeah, and again, and that carries on. So that was great, and it worked at that time. And that's why Ukrainians like very stubborn and very set in their ways and the way that things have always been done. And this is just the way it is, where it's like, well, now you're in America. This is the land of opportunity, and there's abundance, and there's, you know, infinite possibilities, but it's very hard for them to like grasp that. And they're still living in this which, I mean, I am not like judging or anything. If it works for you, it works for you. But I feel like as a culture in general, it's very like, it's like, there is that scarcity, and like there's not enough, and we need to save. And because of that, just like growing up and how it was back in the day where they didn't have much.
Did you go keto and thought you had to give up wine? Well, let me introduce you to Dry Farm Wines. It is the world's first sugar-free alcohol that is lower than your typical wines, organic, made at local farms that do it the right way. Most of the wines that you buy are from 3 really big companies, loaded with additives and preservatives, so many dozens of those kinds of things. You don't want all that junk in your wine. So go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and they will ship you these wines. And just because you listen to this podcast, Dry Farm Wines is going to give you a bottle in your first order for just 1 cent. Go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and you will get your bottle of wine for just 1 singular penny. Go check them out. Dry Farm Wines, you guys. It's wine o'clock somewhere. Let's go get some wine. About the time you left the Ukraine, the country was a little bit in turmoil at that time with all that was happening there. And so they probably built that mindset generationally of, hey, we don't know when all of this turmoil might hit us again, so let's save for that rainy day. I mean, I can see why that mentality is there. That's wonderful. So I want to get into what you're doing to help your fellow Ukrainian people. And again, you wrote a wonderful post. Again, guys, go to Eat, Be Fit, Explore over on Instagram. She's got a wonderful picture of herself when she was immigrating here. But tell us a little bit about what you are doing to try to raise money to help your fellow countrymen.
Yeah, so, I was thinking about it, and it was just, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm praying every day, and sure, I can do that, but like, there has to be more that I can do. And I just kind of felt a little guilty because I was like, that could have been me. Like, if my parents didn't migrate us over here, I would have still been there. Like, God knows if I would have been alive right now, I would have still been there in the midst of all this chaos. So I just feel like so blessed and grateful to be living in this country, to have, opportunity to go to college and start my own business and just everything in my life. And I just I need to give back. I need to do more. So what I decided to do, and like, prayer is great. And if you if you can't participate in this, then like, just please pray. Like, your prayers do matter. But I decided that, to raise some money. So instead of just asking straight up for like donations to send, because my church back in Ukraine, they're doing a lot of donations where they're, medical needs that the kids need, like clothes, all those things they're collecting and shipping off there that, they're saying that they need, that they're lacking there. So I decided to do, since like my audience follows me for weight loss and for keto and for nutrition, everything, I decided to do a fundraiser where I will do a free 14-day trial to BSB Tribe, which is my holistic clean keto weight loss program. And if you decide to join and you decide that the program is for you and you like it, and if you continue, 100% of the proceeds of the first month will go to Ukraine. So that is all in my bio. You could click the link there, or you can go to bsbtribe.com/sign up and start your trial. So it's free for 14 days. And, if you decide like, oh my gosh, they could totally work for me, then yeah, absolutely. Then, I'd love to have you in and support you on your journey. And if it's not the right fit, then it's not, and that's okay. But this is a way that I can give back. And if you're like, well, I don't need weight loss support, or I'm already in a program, but you want to donate anyway, I did set up a PayPal link that's also linked in my bio, that you can just share a donation, and I will be combining all of that and sending it off to most likely, my church in Cleveland, so they could buy resources and figure out what the best way, like who's in need and how I can support them.
Yeah, I loved when I started hearing how people were booking like Airbnb in Ukraine to get money directly to families. Like, there's creative ways to do it and to help these people in their time of need. But wow, thank you. I learned so much about Ukraine today that I did not know. And I think it's a shame as Americans. I mean, we can't possibly know every single culture around the world, but
Yeah.
one gets hit, if we're not like immersing ourselves in trying to learn them, we could have been them. They could be us.
Yeah.
And I would hope that somebody would care about us in our time of need. So guys, go take up Lesya on this offer that she's making, because the money will go directly to help people that are in real
need right now. And certainly, if you're the praying type, praise. If you're not, send happy thoughts, something. Because definitely, I couldn't imagine being from there, having family that lives there, and feeling so helpless right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now my family's safe, thank God for now, but we just never know what's going to happen or who's going to get attacked next. I have an aunt there, and she has 9 children. So, and they're so all of their and their children, all my cousins. It's it's a lot, and so we're just praying for them, and we're keeping touch. But yeah, anything you could do to help. And again, it's like you're right. It's hard to know all the cultures, but it's kind of important to understand why it's so devastating, because the families being broken and like torn, and the husbands having to go to war and leaving their wives and their children, knowing how Ukrainian culture is so family based and so family oriented, how hard it is for them, because this is like their whole life, and they're getting separated and pretty much destroying the heart of the Ukrainian culture, which is very devastating and heartbreaking.
Yes. And do you know if some of the refugees are actually making their way here to America, like some of the women and children that were separated from their mom or their dads and their spouses? Do you know if some of them are coming here, or are they trying to wait it out in a nearby country? Do you know?
So I know my husband did say that I think there's going to probably be something in the future where there will be families coming over. And this is a conversation that we started about, if there is refugees coming, like, what are your thoughts on sponsoring them? And I was like, yeah, like 100% yes. Like, not even no questions asked. So if that opportunity comes up, that's definitely something that I'm absolutely going to do. I haven't heard of it happening yet, but I would assume, like, my uncle is actually going there, and like right now he lives in Cleveland. He's planning to go to Poland and help out with the situation with the refugees coming in. So he's going there soon. But yeah, I'm probably going to reach out to him and be like, if any of them come to the States or Ohio and Columbus, I'd be more than happy to sponsor a family and help in any way that I can.
And look
So
how
we're just kind of waiting for that yeah, and it goes around and around, and you help, me, and I help you, and this is just the way that the world is. And I'm also sporting the Ukrainian flag in my nails, doing a little bit, anything I can. But yeah, that's how it goes.
I caught that when you were like flashing your hands. Oh, she's got the Ukrainian flag colors in her fingernails. That's cute. So, guys, again, Lesya Holzapfel, go follow her over on Instagram, Eat Be Fit Explore, and it's eatbefitexplore.com, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So go check it out, and take her up on this offer. I feel like we as humans, no matter where we're from, should have a heart for other humans, and humans are hurting and suffering right now, and anything that we can do, we should be doing. So, Lesya, thank you for bringing this to our attention today.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I really appreciate you.
You experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
Tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.